At his receiving core, as it stands right now, Devontae Smith, who they just drafted, the phenom out of Alabama, Jalen Reagor, and Travis Fulgham. There's no experience. There's no real experience at the position. We just got reports that now Devontae Smith is dealing with a minor knee sprain or injury of some sort that's going to have him week to week. Reagor is also a smaller in stature receiver at 5'11". Fulgham, who is at 6'2", is only in his second year, maybe going into his third year. Is one of the two. But there's not an overwhelming feeling looking at this that Jalen Hurts is going to have what he needs weapon-wise, personnel-wise, at the receiver's position to be able to create the type of plays that is going to lend to him having a successful season. We had the questions. Everybody had the questions. You play in the SEC. You win the Heisman. You play an amazing style of football in Devontae Smith. But the biggest question is will he be physically enough to sustain the rigors of being in the NFL? And already we're talking about minor injuries taking place. Now, I don't want to overstate that and put injuries on the young man's career, but he is going to have to prove that he can be a #1 receiver, a top receiver, and do it consistently in order to beat the critics and the idea that he's too small to be able to last and sustain at the NFL level. It has happened before. It's been done, but I'm a skeptic of it just for the simple fact that he is very, very small. Now, big heart, I appreciate that. But when I look at this team and the way it's configured, especially at the receiver's position in particular, I just don't see him being able to take a very, very big step in the right direction for this year.
LeVar, they're going to be bad. It's just as simple as that. This is not going to be any type of bounce-back year. They've got 8 guys from the Super Bowl team left on that squad, and everybody else is pretty much young, including the head coach. From what I read and see from Nick Sirianni, he seems fine. It looks like he's endearing himself to the players there. He's earning their respect, and he did a solid job in Indy as the offensive coordinator the past 3 years. He's fine. I am like you. I really like Jalen Hurts. I love the intangibles. He reminds me of Dak Prescott in that regard. I think he's smart. I think he's a leader. I think he can galvanize the locker room. I think guys trust him. We know he can run the football. He has all the intangibles. The question is physically, what is he? I don't believe the reports that he's wowed everybody with some of the throws he's made. I mean, I like him a lot, but his throwing, at least to this point, has been a weakness. As bad as Carson Wentz was last year, he actually threw the football better than Jalen Hurts. He completed more of his percentage of his passes. He had a higher QBR than Hurts had. Hurts did much of his damage with his feet last year and his legs. So he's going to have to improve throwing the football. And you just spelled it out, LeVar. Who's he throwing it to? The receiving core is young. I do like the running backs. I like Miles Sanders. I like Boston Scott. I think those guys, they showed me something, when Wentz got that team into the playoffs, and they played pretty well last year. But overall, this team is going to struggle. We talked about the Cowboys should be good. You really like the Washington football team, LeVar, and they're going to be pretty good, especially with that defense. The Giants, look, I don't think the Giants are going to make the playoffs. I think they're the 3rd best team in the division.
They're a mystery.
But
they're more of a mystery.
It's show and prove time for Danny Jones.
They could
Daniel
be better
Jones,
or worse.
right? They got Kenny Golladay. The offensive line is strong. Saquon Barkley's back. The defense was tough last year. So they're not going to be a pansy either. So I think Philly is going to have a rough go of it this year.
Interesting. My head is coming back together after you said Jalen Hurts reminded you of Dak Prescott. Couple things on Jalen Hurts.
Well, the intangibles.
Intangibles, right. Jalen Hurts was basically Taysom Hill early in the season last year. Then he gets a starting job because Carson Wentz implodes. And Jalen Hurts completed 52% of his passes. 52%. He can't see Dak Prescott right now from where he is.
He beat the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans.
No, actually, it was at home, but he did get the win, yes. Let me just point out.
I think it was at New Orleans.
I got to give Jalen Hurts a little benefit of the doubt because he basically walked into a Jerry Springer episode with the Eagles last year. The quarterback hated the coach. They openly feuded. The front office is a disaster because the owner thinks he knows more than the analytics group. I mean, this is an owner who pushed J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on the Eagles at the draft when DK Metcalf was sitting there and won a few picks later. Okay, the Eagles have major problems. I am going to give a small buy sign on Jalen Hurts, okay? Yes, I like moxie as a term for a quarterback. He's got a little, for the Friday Night Lights fans out there, a little Matt Saracen in him, and he scrambles around and makes things happen. He's got to cut down on the turnovers. Remember, this is a kid who was benched last year late in the season, and he only had 4 starts. All that being said, the Eagles last year had more offensive line injuries than the Cowboys, the most offensive line injuries in the league. If they can fix that, and Hurts is a winner, we know that silly tag that he won at Alabama and Oklahoma. This is a guy who's been through some adversity. Remember, in Alabama, he was the guy, I think he was like 28-1, and then they benched him for Tua. I like Jalen Hurts. I like the cut of his jib. I do think the Eagles will be better than advertised this year. They're going to be big underdogs. I think that you'll be looking to gamble on them as dogs. But overall, yes, they are probably in the basement of the NFC East. 5 or 6 win team. I don't know if Hurts is the quarterback of the future, but this year, I think he could be all right, LeVar.
It was in Philly, by the way. You're right. But listen, he got one signature win. I wanted it so badly to be in New Orleans because it would have been a better win for Jalen Hurts and his resume. I wouldn't bet on him as a dog. I really wouldn't. I just don't. I don't see them structurally put together. You know, we're talking all football and on field. When you talk to me, you know you got to always come off the field with it at some point with me, right? And you got to talk about the leadership and how the leadership trickles down through the organization and down to the players, even to the people who take care of the grass or you know, what's going on with the lines and the locker room. There are so many different things that go into having success as a team and as an organization. We watched the team unravel in so many different ways last year. I mean, the way the season ended with the whole quarterback's handling by Peterson and just the way he was coming back and then he's being fired. And is Carson Wentz the guy in the locker room or is he not? You know, there was so much dissension. All it did was really expose the dysfunction and almost, you know, to a very, very high level of how high it was within the organization. Now, I don't know how deep that rabbit hole goes, but it goes deep enough based off of what we were able to see play out on the field, where I say that in terms of, you know, the way things are handled by upper management and ownership, whatever it is they need to do to correct what they have going on, it's got to start there first. The rebuild of what, because this is a rebuild of the Philadelphia Eagles. The rebuild has to start with the leadership up top before we can even really get into can Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team have a ton of success. I look at these receivers on the field. I don't believe that Jalen Hurts can overcome that. That's just my opinion on it. But when you're looking at the makeup of the organization, if it's an organization that is conducive for success, for them to have success, then the names really generally don't matter as much. The only way you have an opportunity to overcome poor leadership more often than not is if you have great enough talent and great enough leadership within the players to be able to do it. And that's why I said there's not enough veteran leadership, in my humble estimation, not enough experience for them to overcome everything that's taking place up top.
But LeVar, the new coach came from Frank Reich in, you know, they were together in Indy. And he loves the 2 tight end sets, the short passes, and the yak. Get the ball to Devontae Smith in space, let him squirt around, and Jalen Reagor, too.
Don't matter.
So if you have to do that for Jalen Hurts. He can't complete passes down the field. 52%. You've got to throw the short stuff. Well, so there is an opportunity there for some success.
I just think that when you're looking at schematically what the Eagles will have to do, they're going to have to lean heavily on their running game, like you mentioned earlier. Miles Sanders did bail them out at times last year, but you can't expect a running back to bail them out every single weekend. And that's what apparently was taking place in Philadelphia. We haven't talked much about their defense because, quite frankly, I don't know if we have enough information to know what type of